Welcome to another edition of InsurTalks, a Mantra Labs initiative. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest from the world of insurance. Before joining insurance, he worked at GE Capital for 19 years, where he has built a career in retail finance operations. He's a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and a member of the Harvard Business Review Advisory Council. Today, he drives digital transformation as the President of Operations, Communities and Customer Experience at Bajaj Allianz. Mr. KV Dipu, welcome and thank you for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Nevin. Thank you for the warm welcome.
No problem. Mr. Dipu, let's get right into it. This crisis is unprecedented. And let's be real, whether we like it or not, we are all trying to accept this new normal of living. We are learning a lot about new behaviors during this quarantine. COVID-19, for example, is pushing men into the kitchen for the first time. And men and women both are learning to manage their haircuts for the first time. My first question to you is, do you miss the old normal?
Well, Nevin, certainly personally, yes, because we've all been under a lockdown phase, so your normal life, in terms of going out for a walk, stepping out for a cup of coffee, going to meet friends. Certainly you miss that, right? Because human beings are social animals, right? So absolutely. The fact that, you have been completely constrained, certainly, you do miss, the whole way of life.
Part of this new normal is the remote working part of it. And, both businesses and employees are still getting adjusted to this new way of working. But I read recently that before the lockdown was officially underway, Bajaj Allianz had conducted a work from home drill at the Pune HQ. So I was trying to understand what was your motivation behind that and your proactiveness on that side of things, and what did you learn from that exercise?
Yeah, thank you, Nevin. Glad to know that you are aware of it. I guess you've done your research. Actually, when the pandemic started, we actually decided that we should do a work from home drill, because we envisaged that there could possibly a day when we all need to work from home. Mm-hmm. And we went about it with a lot of meticulousness, in terms of figuring out which of our softwares can be accessible from home. People need to have assets, so on and so forth. And coincidentally, just as we were prepared for the drill, the lockdown announcement came, and we said, what a coincidence. We were so glad that we were prepared, and it was amazing to see the spirit of the team. I think everybody tried his or her best to replicate the same level of servicing that they would have given in the office. And very glad to say that the shift from office servicing to work from home and digital servicing was seamless. We've received lots of appreciations from our partners and customers alike. And the proof of the pudding, as they say, lies in the eating. In fact, our grievances are down to, you will not believe it, less than 10% of what they were before the lockdown. And one more thing we did is, because if you notice right now, we're all practicing social distancing, right? But at the same time, we need to stay connected, with our teams. So we have launched, our own homegrown Employee Connect initiative called Celebrating You. So what we have done through this, is we have had a host of, engagement activities. We've had, virtual birthday parties, we have had painting competitions, we have had a MasterChef competition, we've had a poster making competition, we have had music competition, we had a live concert. So I think all in all, we've managed this crisis extremely well. Our employees are motivated and our customers and partners are happy.
That is remarkable to hear, that you've been able to lower grievances, and the fact that the drill itself was just a coincidence right before the lockdown. Remarkable. Right. And what did you take away from the exercise personally? And in terms of planning for, let's say, God forbid, a future outbreak, what has Bajaj Allianz been able to learn from this experience?
One thing, Nevin, is it certainly helps to, keep an eye out on the future, right? Yeah. And make the most of, what you can figure out at that point in time. Mm-hmm. There is no point in waiting for perfect information. You need to be decisive, right? Figure out, the future based on current trends and try and stay ahead of the curve. So I think, that's one thing, which has certainly helped us. Mm-hmm. The other is, I think, a secular shift to digital, right? Because if you look at all pandemics, or if you look at, all outbreaks, right? Whatever may be the situation, whether it is social distancing, or whether it is, constraints in any other form, right? Mm-hmm. Digital has always been, growing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think our entire focus on creation of digital assets, right, I think has really helped us. So going forward, these are two areas we'll focus on. One is, of course, to continue the digitization journey. And the other is, I think, having the humility to say that today it's not about know it all, but it's about learn it all.
Wonderful. That's a great tagline.
Thank you.
Insurance, at least in India, is not strange to the experience of dealing with outbreaks, even though at a smaller scale, with virus outbreaks like Ebola, Zika, and Nipah in the past. But there may not be too many reliable historical models to learn from, unfortunately. And you stated in the past before that fraud triggers can only work if there are strong flags sitting on top of really good data. Now, in the absence of really good data and unreliable historical models, how does this affect your perspective when you deal with fraud, for example?
Yeah. So, Navin, that's a good question. And I think this is exactly what, a lot of players today, across industries are grappling with, because no BCP, no model, ever envisaged this, right?
Right.
And if you do not have past precedents, then you learn as you go, right? So I think that's, clearly what we have seen. Now, the other is coming to COVID. You could see, a series of potential, fraud possibilities. I'm using the word potential fraud possibilities because we'll have to see, how they play themselves out. One is, you could find, a lot of people, who possibly could get into scams, that they can, maybe influence, the entire ecosystem, to help customers, right? Because today a lot of customers, will be wanting, a lot of benefits, right? Be it from insurance companies, be it from the government, be it from various entities. And whenever there is largesse, right, you typically will find, that there are people out there, right, who are out to make a fast buck. So I think that's one area, to watch out for, right? The other is, you will actually find that as business models emerge, right, there are some people, who will be quick to jump into the game, right? For example, today everybody feels, that health insurance, is one thing, we should focus on, right? And that's typically when, you could have both, type A and type B errors. You could have middlemen, who basically promise health insurance, saying that I could get you, this, I can have my way through, various insurance companies. You could have, people, trying to forge, various checkups, through the entire process. So these are some, areas which we are very wary of, right? And the good thing is, even if a model from the past has not helped us with a specific input, I think our experience of various scenarios, will come into play. And I think as long as we are smart on that front, it will help us. Now, this is where it's a classic combination of technology and expertise. Technology can enable the process, but you need years of experience to figure out the fraudulent ones from the good ones. So, which is where I think established companies like ours, which are technically and technologically savvy, as well as have years of deep expertise, will be really able to, figure out, who the fraudsters are.
Right. And from an underwriting perspective, it's usually said that poor underwriting leads to poor financial performance. So the not knowing what to expect part, that definitely has an impact on underwriting losses. So how does this change the nature of risk from maybe the actuary's point of view going forward?
Yeah. So if you look at actuarial science, what they do, with every event, they learn, right? And the learning adds to their, to the kitty, so to speak, right? So today you have, various players, globally, trying to figure out, what are the models, what can be the potential scenarios. And you can also learn from the experiences of different countries. You see, while it's a global pandemic, the scenarios across, various countries are different. Some countries, for example, have had a very sharp recovery. They've shown a V-shaped recovery. There are some countries which are in a U-shaped recovery pattern. There are some where there is a recovery, and again, you'll have an outbreak and then a recovery, which could be a W pattern. So I think as we see the scenarios play themselves out in various countries, right, we draw learnings very quickly, and then, we basically recalibrate our models. That's point number one. Point number two, I think once the lockdown is lifted, and then, when you start to see, people back on roads, when you start to see cars back on roads, when you start to see hospitals functioning again, that is when, I think the rubber will start hitting the road. Right. And that is when, our extreme vigilance will help. And I think as long as we are prepared with data, it will really help us, come through this, with a lot of elan.
Like you said, with a lot of companies today investing in digital, making sure they have digital assets, digital capabilities, digital tools, not just for employees internally in the business, but for outward facing agents as well. So, and that has been a trend even before the COVID-19 has broken out. Most sales teams and channel partners are equipped digitally with mobile apps and etc. to generate codes and issue policies even remotely, right? But given that physical selling itself, the act of physical selling has been severely affected due to lockdown restrictions and social distancing norms, how are insurers planning to build and protect the demand side?
Okay. So there is one famous, WhatsApp joke doing the rounds nowadays. It basically says, guess, who's responsible for digital transformation in a company. Answer number one, CEO. Answer number two, the relevant CXO. Answer number three, COVID-19. No prizes for guessing, right? Now, what COVID-19 has done is, to the point that you made, everybody believed that in a push product like insurance, right? In-person meetings, relationship building, we're all important, and rightly so. And that is the reason, this business is intermediated, and it's been that way for a while now.
Yeah.
New normal, right, is where people will have to learn how to do contactless selling. Right. Now, that is where COVID-19 helps, because if, let's say, COVID-19 had been restricted to, let's say, one particular city or one particular sector, you would not have had a change in universal behavior. But the fact of the matter right now is globally, right? I think there are more people under lockdown than at any previous point of time in history.
Right.
When you have so many people in a lockdown and everybody realizes, the need for social distancing, and the need to go digital, that is when people are also more amenable to being sold to digitally. Right. Which is why now, the smarter ones, right, who figure out that, this is the new normal, right? And how do they, basically manage to build relationships, but while being physically away, right? How do they manage to sell from remote, right? As I say, as I called it, contactless sales. They are the ones, who will be able to make a difference going forward. The good thing is, from a process perspective, we have enabled them. Like you rightly said, they have the tools to generate codes. They have the tools to issue policies. They have the tools to even raise claims, right? It's about willingness. And that willingness has been accelerated and fast-tracked by COVID-19. So what could have potentially taken a long time has now been fast-tracked now in the last 60 days. So which is why once the lockdown is lifted and, we go back into the world, right? We'll realize that, some parts of this contactless selling or a large part of it is here to stay.
It seems like COVID-19 is definitely that impetus finally required to push insurance over the top and digitally finally. But insurance traditionally has had the impression of being reactive and not proactive. But Bajaj Allianz it seems to have taken a lot of proactive steps in making sure all their workforce is enabled digitally. So, do you think in a world where contactless sales is the norm, we will start to see more of touchless user interfaces and experiences?
Absolutely, Navin. In fact, if you notice today, thanks to COVID-19, people are very wary of touch, right? From something as simple as not wanting to push elevator buttons to, avoiding, any interactions with people.
Yes.
In such a scenario, as what you rightly said, touchless UI, touchless user interface, right, is going to be the norm. So now what this means is that a lot of people are going to enable voice, on their digital assets. Because that is also, a trend, which is increasingly coming to the fore, right? Especially if you look at India's digitally savvy and digital native population, right? A lot of them are very comfortable with voice, right? So that's one trend, which we see, increasingly going forward, which will, definitely enable contactless sales, as well as servicing.
I've heard you speak before on the taking insurance to Bharat theme, and I know that you've famously tried to you've championed this idea across many conferences before. And leading into 2020, this was a very big priority for a lot of insurers. But now going forward, how does rural India still feature into your plans at least?
So one statistic everybody will be very surprised to know is that a few weeks back, the number of internet users in rural India exceeded the number of users in urban India.
Yes.
And we were pioneers, around 5 to 6 years back. We launched a concept that was unique at that time called the virtual sales office, whereby we didn't have a brick and mortar office. We basically had a one-man army, who basically had a tab, and his entire office was in the tab. Be it attendance marking, be it issuance of policies, be it collection of payment, be it any transaction, with the customer, right? And that has really helped us, increase our penetration, into the into the farthest corners of the country. Secondly, now what we have done, you see, when we say digital, the default language tends to be English. So for starters, one thing we did, is that on our bot, for example, we offer services in languages other than English. And the other is that as we have, for example, gone about our communication, right? One thing which we relied on extensively during this period was to have, a massive communication campaign with our customers. And our communication was in multiple languages. So multilingual, right, combined with digital can really make, Bharat on par, with India, as in rural India on par with urban India from a digital perspective.
That's very true. I agree with what you're saying. And, going vernacular has a huge role to play in reaching that audience. And, in terms of delivering superior customer experience, tools like chatbots are playing their part. Now, the other fact of it is AI has taken all the credit for this, even though it is not really AI. AI has attached itself to the CX movement in a larger sense, and it's considerably now the poster child of any technology-based transformation. So, but insurance has over the last 5 years increased their adoption of AI, which is the positive sign. But in this new era, how is AI going to play its part in delivering a more intuitive customer experience?
Yeah. So Nivin, if you look at AI, it's essentially going to be a combination of man and machine, going forward. I'll tell you where AI helps. One is AI doesn't sleep. So AI can help you give it 24/7 servicing. Second is AI doesn't have mood swings. AI doesn't attrite. AI, does not throw tantrums, right? So wherever, you can automate, right? And, where the machine can start learning on its own, right? You will start leveraging AI. But core human values, creativity, empathy, right? This is where, human beings will still be relevant, right? So what I see going forward is that areas where AI does best, AI will be leveraged. And the areas where human skills are really required, right? That's where, we'll continue to leverage human beings. Let me give you a couple of examples, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you look at most bots, when bots were first started, right, they were fairly straightforward. What would happen? You would, let's say, log into a website, right? And then you would basically start chatting with the bot. The bot would typically clear, some of your queries, but the bot could not clear all your queries. And then what happens? The bot would typically say, I'm sorry, and then, please contact the call center, right? And then there's a break-in service. Now, what we did is that we wanted to avoid this. So when we launched our bot, we ensured a seamless shift in the backend from the bot to a human being, whenever this happened. So that for the customer, there is no break in the user experience. So it's a complex backend, but a very simple, user interface. So that's one way, in which we, leverage AI, to make sure that our bot is able to service customers. The other is we have learned from our experiences over the years, because as we said, it's always an area of continuous learning. And we are now launching a revamped version of our bot, whereby we'll have far more features, the coverage will be higher, and the customers, will find it, much more real time. So that's again an area, in which, we started with AI and we have leveraged AI, to make a difference to our customers. Another area which we have done is, let's take claims. Now, today, what happens, let's say if you, of course, right now nobody's driving cars, but, just go back to the days when you actually took your car out and then, let's say you're driving somewhere and then, you had a crash, in the middle of nowhere. Right. Typically, what are you expected to do? You're expected to call up an insurance company. They will send a surveyor to assess the damage. And then after that, you basically go through the entire process, right? It takes time. So what did we do? We said, let's empower the customer. So what we told the customer is that you click photographs and at the same time, introduce some norms to prevent fraud. The question that you asked earlier. So the customers would take photographs, and then send it to us. And we have experts here, right, who basically look at these photographs. And then within 20 to 30 minutes, we were able to tell the customer, how much claim, we can pay, right? And that is something, which we have started in, our business, right? Now, going forward, here AI can come in, right? As these images come in, right? And today when you use experts, right? But going forward, right? If you have AI, it can just learn, right? And then tomorrow you could have, completely AI-enabled, claims processing where it's fast, right? And in the areas where you need empathy and creativity, you could have human beings come in. Because empathy is something which a lot of customers require. And to that extent, you could have a human touch. And wherever, you need faster processing, you could have AI come in. So the future is going to be, as I said, a man and machine combination. But I keep telling my colleagues, that you could have an org chart, which basically shows a reporting manager saying, that I have these 10 folks reporting to me. 2 are human beings, 8 are bots.
Right. That sounds like a wonderful office to work in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, I recently read that life insurers are now considering to sell health policies as well. And maybe the IRDA is doing a study to evaluate whether this should be done. With tele underwriting for policies also being introduced into the market. How does this affect general insurers like yourself with the addition of life insurers also selling the same kind of products?
See, sometimes, we do see, areas of convergence and areas of, divergence, between life insurance and, general insurance, right? And why health comes in is because health is one area where you insure the human being. Otherwise, you are basically insuring assets, right? Whether it's motor insurance or property insurance, or other lines of business, right? If you look at overall insurance penetration in India right now, right, compared to, global, penetration norms, right? General insurance penetration had, touched the 1% mark, and, it was, hovering in that region. Globally, it was around, 2.7 to 3%, right? So there's enough space for us to grow, right? There's enough space for us to grow. I think what every player should do is basically, look at the entire population, right? And then see, how can we take it forward? And insurance, unlike other lines of business or other categories, right, is something which people will always need, because we take pride in the fact in telling our customers that we are one company or one industry which comes to your aid when everybody else has abandoned you.
Right.
Because it is when you are in trouble and that you need a claim that insurance, that insurers come to your aid. And because it's a noble industry, we have absolutely no qualms about wanting to expand the coverage of insurance, right? And taking it up, so that we can actually, help a lot of people. And insurance, the other benefit is that it's also a big indirect employer, because it's not only the people who are in insurance companies, but even the large distribution workforce. So the more the insurers, the more the distribution workforce, right? The indirect employment is also very high. So I'm just excited about the possibilities that insurers have, be it life or general, right? Given our entire landscape.
Wonderful. I have a follow-up question. So now you talk about building that relationship with the customer, building trust. Now, building trust is not an easy thing to do, especially if you're an insurance company, because you have a lot of negative bias, a lot of stereotypes associated with the image of insurance that is just hard to remove. And it just seems, unfortunately, we just pass it down generation by generation. So now, InsureTech is being able to bridge a lot of that gap in terms of scale, distribution, and market attractiveness, let's say, for new products. Now, IRDAI is also working on sandboxes for launching new and innovative motor health products. Are you guys looking at new launches in the near future that will address these gaps?
Yes. Firstly, to answer your question around trust, Devin, I think what's very important is to look at data, because data is what can help overcome perceptions. Like you rightly said, many people may feel that maybe insurers don't pay claims. But what people should know that if you look at the combined ratio is basically the total outgo, including claims, commission, and the expenses. For the insurance industry, is around 120, which means for every 100 rupees of premium that they earn, 120 rupees is what they spend, and the biggest is claims. So which means they're paying claims. So we need to look at data, right, which will help us clear perceptions around insurance. Secondly, to your point around InsurTech. Now, how do InsurTechs make a difference? There are two types of InsurTechs. Broadly, right? One is somebody who will come in and say, I'm a new age player. Let me try and compete with the big daddies, right? Which is where I said, for example, years of expertise, will come to the aid of players like us. The second is, you'll have some InsurTechs who basically try to attack some part of the value chain. And then they, tie up with, various players, whereby they try to make life simple for customers. So that's how InsurTechs, come into play. Now, coming to Sandbox, it's a very good initiative by IRDA, whereby IRDA is essentially telling insurers that without having to, go through the entire, normal process, right? If we can fast track it and, look at these pilots, right? how can we ensure that, we get a learning, right? And there's a win-win for everyone. So yes, we did receive approvals for, 2 products. One is a copay in health, and the other is, pay-as-you-go in motor. And we are very excited about these 2 products. And, you will also see us in action. The action has already been initiated. And, we are very excited about, going about our plans on these 2 products.
Wonderful.
So you will hear more about them, from our side very soon.
That's great. Good. That's exciting news. Before we close, and I know I've taken a lot of your time, and I thank you really so much for spending this much time with us. But a lot of experts feel there is no going back. Things have changed. Some say permanently. Personally, I feel everyone is hyping the new normal. Really what's happening is human beings as a species, we are just reluctant to change. Maybe we have to just embrace that change is the new normal. What is your opinion so far on the hype around the new normal and the positioning of things, even the messaging of products and services in this age?
So Navin, what you are right about one aspect. So what typically tends to happen is, when there is a crisis or, when there is a complete change, right? There's always a bit of hype, right? Because human beings may not necessarily, react to it, in a straightforward manner, right? People suddenly start to, throw up extreme scenarios, right? What is likely to happen, when we all get back to work, right? Or when we get back to the post-lockdown era, right? Some things for sure will change. And I'll tell you why. If something has been working well, like right now, let's say work from home has been working well for, 60 days, and let's say it continues for, the rest for another 2 to 3 months, right? Now, people who have tasted success in this, right? Why would they want to, get back, right? Let's take big cities like Bangalore or, Mumbai or Delhi. People could be spending, anything up to 2 hours, one way, right? For the employees, it's a win-win. They save up to 4 hours of commute every day. For corporates, it's a big win because they can save on expensive real estate, right? So clearly, work from home, as long as there is value, right? It will stay. Similarly, right now, given the restrictions on travel on the one hand, which is from a supply side, and even from a demand perspective, people being wary of, stepping out anywhere, right? Some industries like travel, will take some time to, get back to normal. So the impact is going to be different, across, different sectors. As we get back, of course, some semblances of earlier life will come back. And people will go to gyms, people will go out for a walk, people will socialize, right? It's not that, it's going to come to an end, but it will be different. A new normal will kick in, right? Because people initially will be much more conscious. And like we said, work from home, can become a permanent feature. Digital, the digital adoption drive which has kicked in, right? Some part of it, could be, permanent, right? So to expect a complete reversal, I don't think, that's going to happen. So therefore, it's going to be a very interesting, phase, which we will see, over the next, few months. I think this is an experience which nobody had envisaged. It's a once in a lifetime experience. And I think there will certainly be, some features of this, which will be permanent, once we are through with this phase.
Mr. Dipu, thank you for your time and all the wonderful insights you've shared with us today. It's been a real pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Navin. I really enjoyed the conversation, good research and, nicely framed questions. So I also had a wonderful time talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay safe and take care.
Yeah, thank you. You too stay safe and take care. Thank you very much.
Bye.